Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 11th of June. This was rescheduled originally from the 4th of June. Thank you to all those in attendance tonight and those watching at home. I also want to, before we enter the formal agenda, place on record my thanks on behalf of the Council for all those who attended both yesterday and last Monday's ceremonies to recognise and reflect on two amazing lives of James Williams and Alderman Paul Harriott. Both were very appropriate services and absolutely both packed out because there were so many people who wanted to pay their respects. Let's move on then to tonight's business, the first Cabinet meeting of Year 2 of the Labour and Cooperative Administration. Apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Tracy Coombs and from Lauren Edwards, and I think Tris is running late. He will be with us. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decisions of the previous meeting? Thank you. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? No, thank you. That moves us on to our first substantive item. Simon, over to you, the Chatham Centre Design Code.
Thanks very much, Vince, and thank you to colleagues for hearing me out on this one. This is one of our most exciting projects that we're doing. We've got a couple more tonight as well, but I appreciate it. This is all about a new vision for the centre of Chatham. It's based around the people, the connectivity of the community and the environment, and all those issues fit within our new One Medway plan, so it has a strategic position as well. We need to go beyond the previous administration's approach, which was just simply building flats as much as possible. And instead of that, this design code really talks about urban regeneration, about the local character of the area, the local environment, and in particular, its people. That's what this design code is all about. So we're building for the future a sustainable community, and this report, there are 3 supplementary documents attached to the Cabinet papers, so there's a lot of detail in here, and I would urge anyone to read those. It's quite an interesting read about a lot of information about the centre of Chatham, stuff that I didn't even know, and I've been here a long time, so it's exciting to read that sort of thing. And during the process of developing this code, we've carried out extensive public consultation across the whole community. We had a lot of strong support from various groups and organisations from the centre of Chatham. And that kind of co-production work, that collaborative work is now at the heart of everything we're doing. We've done it in Intra, we've done it in Luton, we're currently doing it in Gillingham now as well. So huge thanks to the officers who put so much work into this and to make it happen. This will now be a live planning document. If members are approving it tonight, it will be part of the evidence for our local plan going forward and will come into effect as of today. So I put the recommendation as in paragraph 1.1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. If I can ask colleagues, and I'll bring in Nashaba and Teresa, if you're going to refer to any of the appendices, can you make clear which ones as well? Of course, there are 3 appendices. It's a huge document, but a great document. Nashaba.
Thanks, Vince, and thank you, Simon, for bringing this forward. I know that we've discussed the Chatham Design Code in various meetings throughout the council, and every time everyone has commented on what a brilliant document it is. So I just wanted to have that on the record to say that I'll be supporting this tonight, and I think it really is that, as Simon said, a really strong blueprint for how you can do a co-collaboration piece working with the community and really start to shape our communities and neighbourhoods. And I know that Simon there mentioned potentially looking at something like this for Gillingham in the future, and I think that would be something that would be really, really welcome in terms of creating a piece that brings the community in together and sort of sets out a vision for the future that provides us those sustainable neighbourhoods that we need to see and starts to reimagine what Medway can look like in the future. So just wanted to have that on the record. I know the incredible amount of work that has gone on into this from officers, from Simon, from other members of the Cabinet and councillors, but also, as I said, from community groups, and I think that should be also, they should be thanked for their time and effort into creating this. And I look forward to it becoming not just something that sits on a shelf, but a real working document that we can use as an exemplar across Medway.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nashaba. Teresa, please.
Yes, thank you, Vince. And following on from that, Nashaba and Simon, you're absolutely right. The enthusiasm that the local community have shown with engaging with the process for a design code, I think has been absolutely wonderful. And it's really nice to see how the report reflects their preferences, you know, strong preferences for lower rise, the emphasis on more usable green spaces, the ability to walk safely, you know, from Luton right through actually to Star Hill, the stop and play suggestions that we've got there, the nice seating areas, you know. This is a document that answers the needs of a really mixed community. And it's lovely to see the work starting on St John's. That's very exciting too. So this isn't just something that's a dream, it's coming together now. And I think, Nashaba, you're absolutely right. The work that you have done in putting Gillingham's needs at the front and centre of your efforts, having been so neglected in the past, you know, we can show a lot of encouragement from this, and we've got a template and ideas that we can bring forward in other parts of the towns. And these documents are lovely, aren't they? They're really nice to look at. They focus on our history and heritage, which I think lots of people, including Simon, as you said, including me, you know, we're finding out all sorts of things that we didn't know. And I'm particularly grateful to some of the people who've been, some of the community who've been involved in helping us with the heritage elements. So this is an exciting time. This is something that we absolutely intend to make happen. And it's, you know, there's a piece of us all in this, which is I think, the very nicest thing about it.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Harinder?
Yes, thank you for this report. And I would like to say I support Cabinet colleagues, what they've said regarding that this could really be seen as an exemplar way forward for the other areas of Medway. And the aspect that I like the most in that there is a consensus among a lot of sort of architecture, lots of spatial planning groups that are looking at urban planning again and looking at it in a way where they put the aesthetics, beauty and planning and greenery and sustainability first, and realizing that if that's put first and that foundation of planning is considered first, then actually people aren't naturally anti-development. They're not at all. They the public want to know that those considerations have been at the heart of the decisions that are being made, rather than sort of ad hoc development and where you know we're open to development from development without any consideration for the needs for infrastructure, whereas this lays a foundation for much better urban planning and actually is, I think, the way forward, not just for Chatham, but for other areas in Medway. And I think, yeah, this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harinder. Before I come back to Simon, I just want to highlight 3 or 4 issues. Certainly, this is it's a brilliant document, and it just looks and feels like a brilliant document. Actually, it doesn't feel like a council document, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean that in a kind of, this is not that there's anything wrong with council documents, and in fact, recently, some of ours have been fantastically designed, and this is taking it to the next level. You know, I'm really proud of the One Medway Council Plan. That's a really accessible document, and this goes probably even further because it's had so much input from so many people. And I want to highlight in particular paragraph 8.4. This is the first Cabinet meeting of year 2. And rightfully, people will say, for example, what does One Medway mean? So paragraph 8.4 is a great example of that. That's us as a planning authority and council working with the university and the community to come up with something, you know, not only giving students real life opportunities to feed into a document which is going to impact for probably the next half a century realistically, but also the opportunity to have some amazing stuff for their individual portfolios. And if we can be doing that at the same time as producing exemplar documents for our community at large, that's got to be a good thing. I have had, and I think I've mentioned this, around the issue of the bridge. So there's some iterations and drawings around a bridge. I've had some representations from those who love to use the river. And Simon, I know you're doing a tremendous piece of work which is coming towards conclusion on the river strategy. They politely pointed out that actually we need to make sure that the bridge doesn't stop that happening. I said, I know the bridge is illustrative. There's no plan for a bridge. But of course, the last thing this administration would ever want to do is to stop tall ships sailing, as they do so beautifully. Things like the Edith made sailing down the River Medway. So from that perspective, I know officers and colleagues will be aware of this. But, you know, fantastic document, and a huge thank you to everyone who's been involved. And Simon, your leadership from our cabinet on this, working with other colleagues, not only to build this, but as I say, supporting people like Nashaba in her journey to bring as close to this as we can get, if not even further, with Gillingham, which has had a decade of being forgotten by the previous administration and its MP. That's why we need change. Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you, colleagues, for their really positive comments. I know that Richard's heart is on a bridge as well, so he's mentioned that to me a couple of times. But we will get the bridge in the right place to allow the ships. If we have a bridge, I don't know how we would have a bridge, but at some point it would be nice. As long as it doesn't wobble like the Thames one did all those years ago, but no wobbly bridges. Yeah, thank you very much, colleagues. I mean, it's quite exciting. I mean, one of the things that I really love about this, particularly from my own background, is how we're going to manage the public realm. The paddock is now nearly complete. It'll be opened in about a month's time. And that's looking beautiful, actually, I must confess. It's a stunning piece of work, and thanks to the teams of staff and the architects and the designers who put so much into making that happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing that as a public space. And that public realm and how it can be used will regenerate the economy. That's simple as that. If you've got a beautiful space, people will come and they want to gather and socialise, and they want to invest in those areas. So it's really important from our local economy. It's all about sustainability. So I'll put the recommendation forward in paragraph 1.1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the recommendation agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on then to item 5, Medway Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. Simon, back to you.
Thank you very much. This is much more dry and staid sort of approach to life. This is all about housing delivery Test Action Plan, the HDTAP. It's a document that we have to produce. It deals with the delivery of housing in Medway from a sort of numbers point of view. Basically, we give planning permission for so many houses according to the government's need calculations that we have in Medway, and then we have to deliver those houses. And this delivery process requires an action plan if your delivery rate is below the 95% level that you're required to do. And ours is down about 79%. So we have to produce a plan. Bizarrely, and I will say that openly, they add on an extra 20% if you go down below 85, which I don't understand really, but makes it more difficult to deliver what you're struggling. And actually the delivery of housing isn't just down to the council. I'm going to really stress this point. We are responsible for the planning process. We're responsible for assessing all the needs of the housing and looking at infrastructure around about and making the decisions. The planning committee itself then sits as a quasi-judicial independent body within the council to make decisions on planning applications, and then it's down to the housing companies to deliver. And if the market's not right, or there's not materials, or they can't find the workforce, or the viability isn't right, all those factors that affect the building industry generally across the whole country don't come together, then it affects the delivery rate of housing. And that's basically what's happened, not just here in Medway, but across the country. So we have a real problem there in terms of how we do the delivery. So our delivery plan, which is what this document is all about, is how we work around those issues and how we find solutions to those issues. And at the moment, the plan is saying that we can reach a target of around about, I'm just flicking through, I think it's about 80-something% that we can reach if we go through the plan carefully and do it properly by 2026. The most important factor in here is our local plan. If we can get a local plan in place, which we have it now, the timetables in place to deliver that by 2026, then we will have an opportunity then to fully deliver our housing needs for Medway. So really the whole point about this is getting that local plan done, and this housing delivery test action plan is part of that process. So I recommend it to colleagues for approval and taking forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's a helpful overview. Teresa, please.
Thank you, Simon. That is a helpful overview, and actually the report reminds us of the things that have actually presented a real struggle. In paragraph 2.12, It talks about the unprecedented events over the last few years, the uncertainty caused by Brexit, the transition and supply chain issues, the difficulties after the pandemic and during the pandemic, the blocking of the Suez Canal causing disruption with materials, and inflation increasing with the rising cost of oil and gas, the invasion of Ukraine exacerbating that situation, and facing all of us, including everyone in housing and development, the highest inflation seen in 40 years, with our national self-inflicted ongoing cost of living crisis caused by the mini-budget in September 2022. So I think overcoming those things has been a struggle for everybody, some of them completely unexpected, some of them predictable, some of them entirely avoidable. And I think in the round, it is really important for the test of delivery to take that into consideration. And I think there are things that the council can do to move things on. We know that developers worry about supply chain issues, they worry about skilled worker shortages and the associating increased costs. And there are difficulties with getting registered providers to take on affordable housing. And you know, some of the things that, Nashaba, you've been doing are part of our efforts to scaffold the way that this goes forward. And I'm sure if Councillor Lauren Edwards was here, you know, she would talk about the important role that getting skilled workers, their appropriate training and support that they need to stay in Medway and work on some of these projects. So there's a role for the council in mitigating some of the struggles and challenges that arise out of this obligation. And I think it's important for us to make that point when we come back if the targets don't get as near to the ambition as we hope that they will. And I think we're going to have to constantly keep an eye on this, won't we? Because changes in possible changes in stamp duty, the affordability and availability of mortgages all have an impact on this. And we know that locally there is a huge need for affordable rented homes in Medway, and that homelessness is increasing as a result of some of the problems that the report describes. So I think this is our form of co-production, isn't it? We're not just sitting back, throwing our hands up and saying we can't meet it. You know, there are things that we have to do to make sure that we get the numbers right and that everybody in Medway has got a decent, affordable home. So it's not just a technical report that's about the delivery and supply. It's a report that tells us that we've got things to do to make things happen.
Thank you, Teresa. Nashaba, please.
Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Simon. And actually, I agree with a lot of what Teresa's just said there. And I think, Simon, you're absolutely right that a lot of what we're seeing here is down to the delivery of a local plan, and that comes up time and time again because it's not just about the delivery in terms of numbers, but it is also about that more strategic oversight about where development is going across Medway, and we have to be sure that goes in the right places in the right way. I think just to pick up on what you said, Teresa, I think there is a lot in this action plan that kind of that does address how we meet those targets, and I think it's been really well thought out, but there is this over-reliance on the market, and that happens. And I think one of the things that we do need to start thinking about going forward is, as you said, Teresa, about how we can start to create some of that self-sufficiency within Medway itself. And I know that when I visited Mid-Kent College, they talked a lot about construction skills that they were having, and it's a course that they wish to expand, that they wish to get more people involved in. I know I've spoken to a number of residents whose children are really interested in that, and I think we do need to start thinking about how we create those local supply chains as well as part of this journey. I appreciate it might not be something that we can deliver through this particular action plan, but going forward and in terms of our future thinking on housing delivery, it's certainly something we should be championing, because otherwise we'll always have this over-reliance on lots of external factors that we can't always control, but also on things like materials and relying on a sector that can be volatile sometimes. So I think if we want to get those affordable homes built, we do need to start thinking about those local supply chains as well.
Thank you very much, Nashaba. Would agree with everything both you and Teresa have said, and obviously Simon in opening up this item. I mean, I think obviously time will tell what happens after July the 4th, but actually a more grown-up conversation about devolution and the skills agenda, actually that's the sort of thing where what might seem on the faces of it, as Simon says, quite a technical council action plan, and it is, but actually there's so much more that sits behind it, and the ability for us, you know, to get away from having a binary choice when it comes to devolution, and actually the council having a direct impact and the ability to bring people together, which we do already. But I think with additional resources, which we've seen other combined authorities have, that I think Medway, along with Kent, would be entirely appropriate. And that will be a conversation for whoever the Secretary. We know we're going to have a new Secretary of State. I know who I want it to be. And all of that ties back to this. Ultimately, you know, we don't control the market, but what we can do is influence as much as we can. And I think this plan certainly helps us. Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Thanks, guys. Absolutely right. And particularly those points that Nishal was making about education and the ones that Teresa was making about how we do what we can to control things, but we are not in control of this situation. And I think one of the things that I find really exciting now is the way housing is changing fundamentally. At the moment, we're looking at the design of houses, not from the point of view of just building en masse identical boxes, which the volume houses have been guilty of, but it's about decarbonisation. It's about sustainable communities and such like. And that goes right to the heart of the training agenda. If we do that locally, we can really get some results. Dave Harris, our Chief Planning Officer, set up the local SME forum on this in order just to address those very issues, working with the developers as much as we possibly can. And we have that with the volume build as well. We have a good relationship with them now. We meet them on a regular basis, talk about what they can deliver, and we lay down the rules, if you like, about development control and how we want to see it happen. And they're happy with that. They want to see the same results. So I think the market's changing. I think the way we go about house building is changing. This plan is part of that change. It goes into the root causes of the problems in a lot of detail, but actually those root causes are all valid, and we are going to be addressing them, but we can only do that in partnership with the government, hopefully a new government, and with the developers themselves. And that's something that we are bringing together. Thank you. So I put it for recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's then move on to the third part of the trilogy of Simon's opening agenda items, release of Section 106 funding for Deangate Community Parkland. Simon.
Right. Thank you very much. There we go. I'll just pull up the right page. Thank you. This is all about Deangate Community Parkland, which is an exciting project, has been for a number of years within the council, an area that I know very well. I did some of the original landscaping there back when I was very young, but when it was a golf course. It's a site that was a golf course. It is now much more of a wild space. It wasn't making any kind of profit for us as a public facility, as a golf course, and for various reasons it was left unmanaged. It is now developed into a really lovely wildlife site. I was there today actually, and it's quite a beautiful place. So what we've done is, under the original Housing Infrastructure Fund, there was an element of that fund that was going to be used for what we called strategic environmental management projects, the SEMS side of that. That money we lost last year. However, we decided to keep the SEMS projects alive, and this is the first one of those. There's 3 of them altogether in the area around Who and in the Deangate area. This is the Deangate Community Parkland. We've given planning permission for it to come forward as a park for use by the public. There's some buildings on site, and what we've done is we've managed to identify a significant amount of Section 106 funding dating back several years, which within the rules of the use of 106 funding, we can use it for the development of this new park. So that's what this is all about. Can we have permission to release the funds from the Section 106 area of the council? Just to give you an indication of how popular this is, the park hasn't even started yet, and we've got a friends group there, which kicked off about a month ago. So the local people are really keen on this. So it's something we are now obliged to do regardless, I think, almost, as if we weren't to do it, then they'd be on our doorsteps banging out saying, what's happening? So all we're asking for in this report is to release the Section 106 funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Teresa, please.
Yeah, in the words of the late, great Ian Dury, I think this is a reason to be cheerful. It really is. having spent quite a lot of time on the peninsula lately, because of a big event that's going to be there and everywhere else on the 4th of July, I've been very conscious of, although there is a lot of open space there, not much of it is usable. And for me, as the portfolio holder responsible for health, this will do a tremendous amount to improve the health and well-being of the local population. This will be somewhere safe to walk, enjoy the spaces, it's got great views. And I think the enthusiasm that we've seen from starting a friends group even before the park has actually, started is important. And I think that the designs have been welcomed. There's been a bit of naysaying, but I think that has been lost actually in literal noise, because there is a lot of local enthusiasm for this project. And I think that, the sort of vindictive removal of the HIF funding, which wasn't just about housing, it was about things like this. It's a courageous step, Simon, with your leadership and council officers, to make this real and keep it going. And I think that it will be the start of the kind of infrastructure that we need on the peninsula, regardless of what development is happening, because it has actually been neglected. And so I'm really looking forward to the wildlife and everybody else benefiting from this. I think it will be a completely different approach, and of course it will be an attraction as well for other people. It's a perfect place for people to cycle out of the towns and enjoy, and I'm sure that all of those kind of elements are going to be built in. So I'm very pleased to see the formal start of this and the release of the money to actually make it happen.
Thank you. Any other member on this? Before I come back to you, Simon, obviously it wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk about a manifesto that doesn't exist yet, but I will talk about 5 pledges that do exist from last year. I'll remind you about pledge number 4. Pledge number 4, which says establish new parks and improve access to green spaces. Simon, on behalf of the whole council, with this report, and I know it's not you, and you'll be the first person to say it's a team effort, it's officers, it's the friends of groups, it's everybody else. But it takes leadership from this cabinet, and you've done great work. Your personal passion and dedication for this is without question. And I know from speaking to people across Medway, and I know you were with a number of our friends groups just this past weekend to say thank you to them as part of Volunteers Week, that our green spaces are valuable for all the reasons actually Teresa laid out, in the sense of the health and well-being, the mental health, and that ability to come together as a community. So this is really important. Compare that to the first cabinet meeting last year, where we were having to deal with £170 million being cut by the Conservative government. That's what happened last year. That's what happened. And despite that, we've taken political decisions to press ahead, to work with the limited, because it is limited, funding that we get from developers, many of whom are crying viability, as we spoke about in the previous agenda item. So I'm really proud that we are continuing to deliver on our 5 key pledges. Lots of people seem to have made up lots of other things of lots of other pledges we made last year. It's really clear. We made 5 key pledges. This is one of them. We are delivering as a Labour and Cooperative administration for the people of Medway, but specifically for the people of the Hoo Peninsula, who in particular, I understand their frustration sometimes when a number of them will say, I'm not against development, but I want infrastructure, and that's every form of infrastructure. We will keep fighting for those resources, but we will deliver with the resources we have in such a way, as you rightfully say, that people are queuing up to be part of that conversation to support this project moving forward. Simon, back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your kind words. Appreciate, colleagues, that this is exciting, and there's a lot of work now to be done as we take this forward. I just reflect back on the event last week with Capstan, where the volunteer groups came up and we said thank you to them. The Deputy Mayor was there saying some really kind things to them as well. They are vitally important, and it demonstrates how important this is, not just from a biodiversity point of view, but from that, probably more importantly, on a daily basis, the health and well-being of our community. And that's, I know, something Teresa's passionate about as well. So thank you very much, colleagues, and I put forward recommendation 1.1 in the report.
Thank you very much. Is that agreed? Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, item 7, to easement of use of Medway Council land at Jeffery Street Car Park, Gillingham. I'll hand over to Nishaba. Remind colleagues, obviously there is a blue paper report. I don't think we're going to need to go into closed session, but do remind you that if you do want to speak about the blue paper report, we would need to go into closed session. Nishaba, over to you.
Thank you, Vince, and unusual for council meetings. This one is actually about some income coming into the council. The paper is essentially about granting an easement to number 21 Jeffery Street, which is the neighbouring to the car park at Jeffery Street, which will allow the planning permission that has been given for that site to come forward. Just for clarity, it does not impact the car park in terms of usage or parking spaces whatsoever. And this is this is largely just about allowing that easement, which will then allow an income for the council. The reason, and will also allow the planning consent to come forward as well, the two things working together. The reason why this has come forward as a cabinet paper is because it goes above the threshold of £20,000, so that's the reason why this has been brought forward to cabinet. But hopefully it's a relatively straightforward paper in terms of what it's asking and looking at. And as I say, just for that clarity once again, it's not going to impact the car park itself. It's just about granting the easement for the planning consent. If anyone's got questions on it though, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you very much, Nishaba. Any questions from colleagues? No. I think just to hand back to you before, just to say, look, I think, again, well done to officers for making sure that this is in the right place at the right time. You know, we want developments to happen, and sometimes that will need a negotiation because we may well be the neighbouring landowner, as we are in this case. And as the law quite rightly says, we need to get best value, and officers, in my view, have done that. So thank you. Back to you, Nishaba, for any final comments.
I don't think there's anything further to add other than what's already been said, so I present the report to Cabinet for approval.
Thank you very much. Is the recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 8, which is the Capital and Revenue Outturn and Annual Debt Write-Off Report. Recommendations are laid out in paragraph 1. Would refer colleagues in particular to paragraph 1.2, where we'll be making a couple of additions, or we will be recommending to council a couple of additions as laid out in paragraph 1.2. I think I want to start the presentation of this report by saying a huge thank you to the organisation as a whole. As we've talked about here on many occasions, both in formal cabinet, working closely with Richard and the team of 25 as a cabinet and corporate management team, and actually the council as a whole, so all parts of the council, have played their part in working as efficiently as possible, sometimes making that choice to not make that expenditure because finances are where they are. And we've got to the point now where actually we've managed to come through last year's financial situation. Our reserves, because we unring-fenced a couple of reserves, as was laid out previously, our reserves are broadly where they were this time last year. You will recall this time last year that the year before's budget had been built on reserves and then used additional reserves to get through that previous financial year to this one. It's worth recognising, of course, we now have the financial improvement document, the FIT plan. So that's coming forward and we're working on that, and I know colleagues across the Cabinet are working with officers to look at how those things come forward. Colleagues may wish to mention individual lines and parts of the document. It's there for all to see. I think it is worth recognising that one of the things which I think is taxing us already and we're thinking carefully about is, of course, in paragraph 10, the household support grant. We had a very positive visit this last week from the Department for Work and Pensions, who wanted to come and see us, see the council, to see what the work that was happening here. We were really pleased to receive them, and it was a very helpful conversation, both to highlight the good work that is happening here under Phil's team and working closely with Mark's team, because some of it is closely tied into housing. So from that Assistant Director's perspective, but also to make some points clear that whoever the next government, there are some things that would make us as a unitary authority, and I suspect other unitary authorities across the country, their process is slightly more straightforward and, dare I say it, more efficient. We will always work as efficiently as we can within the rules that we have. And I thank the DWP officers for coming to see us. So again, showing that Medway is going above and beyond and being recognised positively to have a conversation of that nature. I'll also draw colleagues' attention to paragraph 14. Again, that will speak for itself. That is around the irrecoverable debt. This is a standard report. This comes every year. But certainly we've had higher levels of transparency than perhaps in previous years, and you can see some of that from the notes there. I'm happy to take any questions, but it is where we are. It is worth recognising, of course, that we continue on our journey. We are not through the difficult decision-making, and I'd say that directly to the people of Medway. They've been supportive of the process we've had to go through, some difficult decisions. I suspect whoever the next Secretary of State is, there will not be an unlimited cheque coming to Medway or indeed any other council. So from that perspective, we will have to continue on our financial improvement and transformation journey, but it's one that I've got confidence in. I think it's a well-written plan, and I pay tribute to actually Phil and his team. Again, although it's been a whole council approach, rightfully, colleagues have looked for support, advice and guidance from Phil, Katie and the wider finance team, and I'm very proud of the work that they've done supporting that one Medway approach. I'll pause at that point. Teresa, please.
Thank you, Vince, and can I add my thanks to all the people that you've just thanked, because, and by that I mean the whole council. Our staff and our senior officers have been very understanding of the position that we find ourselves in and of the measures that we needed to take to balance the budget, and they worked so hard. It was absolutely incredible under the stricture of the additional external financial scrutiny that we brought in to turn over those stones and make sure that we knew where we are. As people can see from the report in section 6, there is a worsening position in adult social care. Demand continues to rise, and I'm afraid the funding at government level, after 14 years of austerity and not much change, even in spite of additional money coming in through the Better Care Fund, simply isn't keeping pace with the needs of our community. And as people often hear me say, who am I talking about? I am talking about us. I'm talking about our families. I'm talking about the way that people in Medway need caring for, some of them, for the whole of their lives. And we've got to do that in the very best way that we can under these financial constraints. So I'm grateful for the extra support that has come from finance and more to come to help adult social care manage some of the measures that we've taken. I'm grateful for the prudent way that care packages are being identified, assessed and reviewed to make sure that we get best value. And look, if anyone is in any doubt that this money isn't being well spent, perhaps they might like to join Assistant Director Jackie Brown and I, as we did a couple of weeks ago, when we visited some of the homes that care for the most vulnerable people in our communities. People can say that the packages of care that those people that we visited are eye-watering, and they certainly made my eyes water, but in a good way, because I was absolutely overwhelmingly impressed by the kindness, tenderness, determination of the people working in the facilities that we saw for people who have never been able to walk or talk. The people who are most vulnerable in our communities, who have lived the whole of their lives, not being able to engage in the way that us around this table are lucky enough to do so, but being surrounded by the love and support of workers who believe and deliver a real life to them. In those homes, I saw 10 people, each with a lovely bedroom, personalised to them, surrounded by staff who took the greatest of care for someone who cannot speak to find out what they liked by playing them music, by showing them pictures, by taking them to places so that their bedrooms were themed to reflect the needs that they had. And for those people who could move around, gentleness, kindness, helping somebody who can only use one hand make a cup of tea for themselves. That costs money. It takes time. It's what we owe. It's where we see the very best of us and where we see the very worst of us if we, any of us complain about the way that we contribute to making sure that those people can live their best lives. That's the extreme end of it. And the rest of it is graded through the way that we look after people. We need more money to do it. We've got to put our own resources and facilities in because we've got to challenge the market and be a gold standard. And I'm determined to do that. We've started with the right-sizing exercise. It's great to see new jobs coming into a service that was absolutely raided by the last administration, almost on its knees and unable to meet its statutory obligations. But the people who work in that have not been cowed by the situation they were in. On the contrary, their enthusiasm has stayed. They are doing the very best they can. I sit in at panels and I listen to the rationale that our staff put forward for somebody who needs a care package. They are willing to modernise. They are stepping up their game. We've got to be behind them while they do that. But when you see the things that I saw a couple of weeks ago, it does make your eyes water. And I think, we really need to remember that when we're talking about where this money goes.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other colleague? No, thank you. I mean, I'd say this is a document which shows the difficult decisions. And again, I make no apology for those difficult decisions that we will take and have taken as an administration, ones which nobody gets into local government to make. But the alternative is just handing over the keys to DLUC, and we were never going to do that. So it was right to bring in SIPFA. It was right to take some tough choices. It will be right to take some tough choices, certainly for the budget that we'll set next February, almost certainly, because we need to be at a point of financial sustainability. That's what the people of Medway voted for last May, and that's what we have delivered and will continue to deliver. And I thank the people of Medway for their recognition of that, and we will continue to work hard to deliver for them as we move forward. Are the recommendations agreed as laid out? Thank you. Let's then move on to item number 9, the Fair Tax Motion Update. I'm really pleased to be bringing this update forward. Colleagues will recall that Councillor Lauren Edwards, Lauren, who is, I say, unfortunately not here tonight, brought this forward to the first council meeting of this particular administration. And it was supported eventually on a cross-party basis, which of course is to be welcomed. As that recommendation had in it that we would bring forward an annual update from last year, we've done that, and people can see that laid out in paragraph 4.3, which were the 10 resolutions as part of the motion. And you can see in paragraph 5, very helpfully and clearly laid out where we've got to with each of the 10 resolutions, not least number 10 being that we're debating this tonight. So I want to draw particular attention perhaps to resolution 3. That's particularly pertinent. I mean, that would be important at any time, but particularly if you think about the journey we're on with some of our departments around moving away from temporary and locum staff. Part of why that's important is making sure that those that we do retain are playing their part effectively and efficiently and properly through the tax system, through the IR35 regulations. And you can see there as well other parts of the resolutions that we're making sure that when we go through tendering exercises, we're seeking the relevant information appropriately. We do not offshore vehicles we don't use offshore vehicles. 5.7, so resolution 7 is the one where there is still more work to be done. This is around our 2 solely owned companies in the joint venture of Medway North. They don't currently have that certification, but I know that's something which is being worked towards, and that's, of course, a good thing to see. And I know the team here, the finance team and the comms team have put something out. Obviously, because we are in the pre-election period, there's no quote from me. We were very clear. We will follow those rules. But that has gone out appropriately from the officers to make that case to say, actually, we are recognising positively Fair Tax Week. So on that basis, happy to move that we note the update. Any colleague? Teresa and then Simon.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to see this. I think that it improves the council's public-facing probity and shows our intention to make sure that all of our dealings are above board, transparent, and that people are meeting their obligations so that anyone who wants to do business with us knows what our expectations are. Just a tiny typo, I think, at on climate change implications, where it says there are now climate change implications. I think it means that there are no climate implications, notwithstanding Simon's ever enthusiastic determination to say there's climate implications for everything, which there sort of is on this one. I think we better correct that in case somebody, finds that we don't know what we're talking about. It's just a little thing, but it actually changes the whole sense of it quite significantly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Simon.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to raise that one myself. No, thank you. And I will add that that's something that we need to be looking at a bit more closely when reports do say that, but that's for another day. I just wanted to highlight something about this that's so important, and I appreciate that tax is currently a political football going on in the media and everywhere else at the moment for a whole sort of different reasons, and the rights and wrongs of that can be debated by the politicians who are standing for election. But there's a fundamental underlying principle here, which is about the moral imperative of tax. We cannot deliver pothole repairs, or hospital waiting lists can't go down, or basic council services around housing and delivery and all that can't be delivered unless tax is fair and absolute and there to be used in an appropriate way. And this underlines our principles here as a council, how important this is. So it is really a vitally important report, underlying the importance of tax, but also making it fair. And I really like Resolution 7. It's something that I'm involved in these companies, about them coming in part, because that can show the private sector that this can be done across the board. There's nothing cool about avoiding taxes if it means that we haven't got enough staff at the council to do the work that's necessary. So we want to get this right, and this is very, very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. I don't see anybody else. So before we move to the recommendation, we'll change the typo. Thank you for that. And you're right. So colleagues that have heard me say from this chair a number of times over the last year, this administration wants people to play by the rules. And that's whether you are parking near a school when you shouldn't or paying the right level of tax. And so this sits very fair and square in the centre of our kind of basic approach to what we want to see in Medway. We want people to play by the rules, and if they don't, there'll be consequences, and this could well, in this case, be through their tendering processes with us. We want to see people acting appropriately. So very, very pleased that this was in the original motion to come back to this Cabinet a year on. I welcome that. Of course, there'll be an opportunity for others to debate it at July's full council in my leaders' report. But really, really pleased to see this. It sends a clear message of where this council, along with many others, and I have to say predominantly Labour and cooperative councils, let's be very clear, this is very much a cooperative party ethos, and they strongly recommend this. So we were very pleased to bring this forward as Medway's first ever Labour and cooperative administration. Is the report noted as mentioned? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item number 10, which Adam is going to present in Tracy's absence. And talking of absence, before I move to you, Adam, just for the record, can we note apologies from Councillor Tris Osborne, please? Thank you. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, I'm pleased to present Medway Adult Education's annual accountability agreement. And it's obviously on behalf, as Vince has alluded to, my colleague, Councillor Tracy Coombs, the portfolio holder for education. This comes from Sunny Yee's team, and some really good work there, headed by Daniel Ratcliffe, and working closely with our partners as part of the One Medway plan. So the council is required to submit one of these statements each year, to the Department for Education as part of its annual grant agreement. There's also a useful strategic document in this report which we can share with partners, and in fact we work with partners in order to draw it up, and also as a strategic backdrop to those strategic conversations that we have with the Department for Education. And the first one of these accountability statements was agreed and submitted August last year. It is consistent with the One Medway Council plan, as I've already mentioned, notably these two priorities: benefiting from good education, quality jobs and a growing economy. And the second one is improving health and well-being for all. It demonstrates how Medway adult education is meeting the national priorities and working with key local stakeholders like Mid-Kent College, Jobs Centre Plus and voluntary sector partners. And in this year's accountability statement, we've also got a diversity impact assessment which has been completed, and that's attached to the report as Appendix 3. Climate change appears, those climate change outcomes are within the priorities laid out there. So the detailed statement is in Appendix 1, and just turning my page here, Medway Adult Education is serving the residents of Medway. They've got some amazing facilities. Obviously, they've had it for many years at Rochester, but also the Gillingham one, very close to Britton Farm there. It's a really good addition there. And Medway Adult Education is focusing largely on lower level skills like development and helping residents to engage with education. Often for those individuals, their first time engaging with education for the first time for many years. So I am pleased to recommend that we consider and approve the statement to be submitted to the Department for Education, and I'm happy to take any comments, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adam, Teresa, please.
Thank you, Adam, and Tracy as well for both of your leadership on this important area. Look, I think we can be really proud of our adult education service. In the past few years, they have stepped up their game. This week is Carers Week, where we've been celebrating and thanking all of those unpaid carers who work in family situations and sometimes with friends, saving us as taxpayers a great deal of money, but doing it through the kind of love and determination that they have for those that they care for. And who was there today at the Carers First event? Medway Adult Education Centre, playing their part, a very important part actually, in offering carers the vehicles that they have that can make carers realise their own needs, do the things that make them feel they have got a sense of belonging and they're not just in a caring role. And that can be absolutely critical when you're caring for someone. Adam, I know you've got direct lived experience of doing that and of the kind of comfort and solace that you found in our activities through our libraries and through other things. And you know, adult education have widened their remit. They're part of lots of gardening groups. They're making a tremendous contribution now to the health and well-being of Medway in a way that I think wasn't the case, actually, a few years ago. Under Dan's leadership, that they are prepared to engage with other parts of the council in a much more vigorous way. And last week, at Medway Voluntary Action's event celebrating volunteers, there were Medway Adult Education there. And two of the people on the stall had been volunteers with adult education and had got jobs. So, you know, adult education is often a gateway for people wanting to return to work. If they've had a period of illness or a period of unemployment, that supportive environment makes a real difference. So I think we can be very proud of the accountability statement, of all of the things, of the infographics that show us the size of it and the way that we see adult education in lots of parts of our community life in Medway now. I know, Simon, your work with the sensory garden, the people from the Adult Education Centre have joined in there. We've got a thriving and you know, very popular cafe there now, Jasper's Cafe, giving volunteers again and people who need a supported environment to be a volunteer an opportunity and serving actually really great food. My favourite's the quiche and salad homemade quiche and salad for a £5. giving those to the students there, to the volunteers that come in, and lots of other people. So it's a vibrant place to be, and I know that it's the same in Gillingham, offering public, through our public health department, cookery classes, and other classes through the food partnership for families. So this is an area of vibrancy, of growth, and really showing how adult education can play a part into getting people back on that pathway, you know, doing a basic level course and then thinking about stepping it up, going to Mid-Kent College or even in some cases to university, as well as those traditional arts and craft-based things that actually are still going on amongst the people in our community who've been using adult education for very year. And the blend is a positive one. So hope everybody will go along on the 22nd of June to their open day in Rochester. There'll be a barbecue. As there was last year, cooked by Gillingham Street Angels, and lots of things going on, getting people to continue to engage with that service.
Thank you very much, Teresa. An excellent date for everyone's diary. Simon, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Teresa mentioned about the role that the Adult Education Centre plays with our green spaces, and I just wanted to highlight one example. In the Vines Garden in Rochester, a lot of the spring bulbs that you see every year were planted by the Plant and Grow group. Of a group of quite severely disabled people and people with issues of various sorts who turn out in the spring or whatever in the November time as well to stick bulbs in the ground and then the following spring watch the results. So there's a lot of amazing work that just gently goes on in the background of what they do at the Adult Education Centre, which is so brilliant and so encouraging and like been said, bringing people back into the community in so many ways. And I love just at the bottom of the list of things that they're improving basic skills, reducing social, and the last one says having fun. I love that. So that just sort of highlights it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Before I come back to Adam, I mean, I would support everything that has been said on this item so far. Medway Adult Education are a great partner of Child Friendly Medway as well. And again, it's that one Medway approach, that one Medway Council approach of working collaboratively. And I know that there are adults who have taken up courses as a result of them being at a Child Friendly Medway event. So again, it's that working collaboratively, breaking down the silos. Teresa, your point is incredibly important to say that, and the reason it's important is there are some other councils across the country who, because of the different situations from central government, are actually pulling away from the kind of more, as some would see it, the kind of softer adult education offer. And I think that's a wrong move. I think the place what we've taken on this is the right place to say, of course, it needs to be financially sustainable, of course. However, those courses are well received, they're well run, and absolutely there's an income generation. But actually, even if they were cost neutral to this authority, we'd certainly want to see them proceed. I'd pay particular tribute to Dan for his leadership, as well as being someone who somehow crams in the small matter of the armed forces as well. So I see a lot of his work in that environment. And the final point before I come back to you, Adam, Teresa, you are absolutely right. If I think back to 5, 7, 9 years ago, where adult education was at that point, the Ofsted it received at that point was painful. It was difficult. And there would have potentially been an argument from the administration, who weren't us, of course, to go, let's stop doing this. Let's just hand over our statutory responsibilities. To be fair to the previous administration, they took, I think, the right decision to focus harder, make sure the outcomes are right, and that leads to where we are today. And I think absolutely taking this service from strength to strength. And I would encourage others to get along on the 22nd to see everything that's happening there. Adam, back to you.
Yes, and thank you, Vince. Also, thank you to Teresa and Simon for, sort of putting more of a picture over certain aspects of this. Could be viewed as a fairly dry annual statement, but I think you've actually showed why it is so vibrant and is a real part of Medway's offer. So I move that we approve the Medway Adult Education Accountability Statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Is that agreed? Thank you. Let's move on to item number 11, which is the Council Plan Performance Monitoring and Strategic Risk Summary Q4. So reminding all colleagues, of course, this is the last report of the Council Plan that wasn't ours. And I look forward to future reports of this nature moving forward. I'd say a couple of things in moving the recommendations as they are laid out in paragraph 1. On the strategic risk summary, although there's very little change in the actual risk register and risk ratings, actually the narrative and the way this report is now laid out is excellent. It shows in detail where there have been changes, organisational, national, whatever it might be. And equally it says if nothing's changed. And in some of those risks, of course, there will be quarters where nothing much is changing, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. But for those who take an interest, both within the council and further afield, the way it's laid out is really clear, really accessible. And for those who are interested, I'd encourage people to have a look at that. The performance is laid out as it has been, like I say, from our perspective as this administration. This is not our plan, but of course a lot of these things are important to us, so colleagues may wish to pick up on elements of that, and it will go through scrutiny throughout the coming month. So I'm happy to pause at that point and see if colleagues have anything they wish to raise. Or not. Okay, on that basis then, I'm happy to move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. Are those agreed? Thank you. That takes us to the final item for tonight, which is the Cabinet Advisory Groups. Again, recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. And refer you to the appendix which talks about the memberships. We are retaining what we created last year. You will recall, colleagues, that we got rid of a lot of Cabinet Advisory Groups because although the issues were important, they didn't need Cabinet Advisory Groups. They could be dealt with in a number of different ways. We retained 2, the Corporate Parenting Board, and that is something which I know everybody here takes a keen interest in, and you can see there in Appendix 1 the named members and substitutes, and the Town Centres Board, which has a widened scope from previous years. That started last year, it continues now. We very purposefully have asked for 1 member from each of the 5 towns, so you have got a voice from each of the 5 town centres on that board, along with 3 cabinet members accordingly, and we invite others as and when required. So, for example, Nashaba, with the excellent work you've been leading, working alongside Lauren, I know you've attended at least one of those over the last year. So it's business as usual. We're not looking to create any new boards. That said, of course, if we need to throughout the year, you know, things happen. So if there is a requirement for that, we'll obviously bring that back to Cabinet in due course, but I'm not anticipating that at this stage. Happy to throw it open to any colleagues. Simon, please.
Yeah, thank you. Not too much detail, just to pick up a really, really important point, and I think this is something we've discussed and debated a lot, and it comes out strongly in this report in terms of the terms of reference, and I'm talking about the Town Centres Board here, and that's about identity. We have a Town Centres Board for the whole, but each of our 5 centres now has its own board. It's working hard. And we've realised very early, I mean, even before last May, that actually whatever you do to Medway, people love their bit. Whichever bit you come from, I'm from Rochester, I'm from Gillingham, I'm from Chatham. People talk like that, I'm from the street. That's how they talk, and that's how we should accept that and welcome it. And I love the identities that they all have, because they're all unique, they've got their own histories, they've got their own stories, they've got their own communities, and that comes out really strongly in this report, and I think that's something to be celebrated.
Simon, that's really helpful, thank you. And I would agree. I'm proud that I was brought up on Luton Road, I'm proud that I live in Chatham, and I'm proud to be Medway. And you can be all 3 of those things very comfortably. So thank you for raising that. Any other colleague, anything else on this? Fairly straightforward. Are colleagues happy to agree the 2 recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1? Agreed. Thank you very much. That finishes tonight's Cabinet meeting.